Hello everyone and welcome back to the Baking Analyst channel. On this channel, we cover cryptocurrencies, economics, personal finance, with a focus on yield farming for now. If you're completely new to yield farming and DeFi, I actually have a free online course that you can access with a free trial of Skillshare in the link below. You can cancel anytime at no cost to you. With that out of the way, let's get right to the content. So in today's video, we want to cover the truth about tokenomics and emissions, or rather the myth of reducing token emissions to combat inflation, as well as go through some Harmony One updates. So the first thing that I want to get out of the way is kind of a rant, but we see that a lot of projects such as Artemis Protocol, for example, they're reducing emissions, and I said in my last video that the emission rates were going to be stable in Artemis at 3 MIS per block. Well, that isn't the case. Apparently, people voted to reduce the emissions, thinking that this would preserve the token's value. However, you might be wondering why I started the video showing this graph over here. The US dollar index and the 10-year treasury yield has nothing to do with crypto, does it? Well, this is where we get into the economics part of this whole channel, and we debunk the myth that simply reducing emissions without increasing the token's utility whatsoever will somehow preserve the price and prevent whales from dumping or prevent farmers from dumping the token to oblivion. So as you can see from the graph here, as the US 10-year treasury yield, or basically the yield on government bonds, increases, the US dollar appreciates as well, i.e. the US dollar index goes up. Now this is a very simple demand and supply relationship regarding currencies. Essentially what happens is when interest rate goes up, it becomes more attractive to hold assets in that particular currency or in that particular country, and then people essentially transfer their currencies from whatever currency they used to have into the currency that had just increased the interest rate, leading to the currency appreciating. And this is very similar to what's happening in yield farms. Specifically, it is the opposite. So when emissions are cut, your APR goes down and it becomes less attractive to leave your money in those farms. And therefore, liquidity flows out of the system. And if that particular token has no other value whatsoever than as a farm token, or has pending updates to the ecosystem that are yet to roll out, thus negating any use case at present, the token price is going to tank. And that is exactly what happened when Artemis Protocol lowered their emissions from 3.5 MIS per block down to 2.5 and down to 2. So it went all the way up to a high of like $4 when emissions were like 700% APR, and then came all the way down to like $1.31, and then now it's just being buoyed by the whole crypto upswing. While on one hand, reducing the supply of a particular token could work to help the price increase if it has a utility apart from being farmed and dumped, it is highly unlikely that reducing emissions would preserve the price in any way. In fact, it would potentially lead to the acceleration of the price dump because people just want to FOMO out and into the next high APR farm. And that's what we saw with ViperSwap when they ended Snake Month. That's what we saw with LootSwap as well, now trading at about 15 cents. So let's just get it out of the way, and I hope that people understand this, that just because you reduce emissions and supposedly reduce the supply or inflation of a particular token, it doesn't mean that you're going to preserve the price in any way, especially if that token doesn't have any other utility apart from being a farm token as of yet. So with that rant out of the way, let's move on to the Harmony One updates. And actually a bit of Cronos as well, because Cronos just got delayed into November, so I guess part of our funds will be staying on Harmony for now. And that's not bad, honestly, since Harmony has really been on a tear recently. So the first farm that I'm looking into today is OpenSwap. OpenSwap have actually been around for a long time already. In fact, they've probably been around for longer than ViperSwap, correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem to be one of the first DEXs on Harmony. Originally, their interface was pretty unintuitive, but now that they've upgraded it, it looks really good. And it's much more usable now. Also, you see that all these pairs have no deposit fees, no withdrawal fees, no lock tokens, and they come with pretty quality pairs like BTC1 doing like 100%, BTC BUSD doing 252%, which is insane given that OpenSwap just pumped about 100% last night. But these are pretty juicy APRs that you might want to get into while also investing in quality coins. So OpenSwap's farms seem to fulfill all of our criteria. No deposit fees, no locks, good APRs, and quality coins. Now let's have a look at the tokenomics to see whether they're actually sustainable. And as we can see, we're currently in year one, so the issuance is about 24 million. This is issued at a steady rate after this initial 13 million, which has already passed in May 2021. So we can expect pretty stable yields or pretty stable emissions for a given period of time for at least the first year. And from year two onwards, it is all steady. Looking at their documentation, it seems that they kind of do understand that they need to keep high APRs in order to keep liquidity. Otherwise, liquidity is just going to flow into the next biggest thing, which is a pretty good sign of developers who know what they're doing. So one thing that's nice about OpenSwap is that their emphasis is placed on transparency and safety with this discussion that they are releasing an audit report. I think they found a few flaws in the audit report, but they're really open about it. They communicate to the community about it, and they also say that, you know what, they're going to fix it. You know, SushiSwap might also have similar flaws, but that your funds are safe. So that is one reason why I've decided to move some of my funds over into OpenSwap, especially since you don't want to not be holding Bitcoin at the moment with what's happening in the crypto market. So OpenSwap fulfills all our criteria, seems to be legitimate, and has a good user interface. So definitely go check that out. And I feel like OpenSwap is one of those things that have just been forgotten and left by the wayside, especially if you go into vfat. They're listed like one of the earliest DEXs. People generally just skip over it thinking that it's done, you know, they just move on to the next one. But yeah, it's been pretty much neglected for not a very good reason, because it seems that the APRs are still very attractive. The next project is a new project, which is called Adena Finance. And Adena Finance is currently doing insane APRs, no lockups, and no deposit fees. They used to have a deposit fee on this ETH UST pool, but they removed it, making it much more attractive for us yield farmers to park our money inside. Adena Finance looks to be like a SushiSwap clone of sorts. All the fonts and all, and the buttons and user interface elements seem to come straight from SushiSwap. And if you go into Discord, the developer is reasonably responsive, but of course this doesn't really have a track record, and that is one risk that we're taking to get these huge APRs. But other than that, they do fulfill all of our other criteria, which is that deposit fees are low, no locked tokens, no withdrawal fees, and high APRs, as well as coins that we actually want to hold. So when it comes to the tokenomics, they don't explicitly place it on their documentation. However, if we go to their Discord server, we find that they actually did mention it on an AMA previously, that emissions per day is 36,000 Adena for 913 months, which is north of 70 years really. So it's pretty stable for all. It's predictable APRs, no locked tokens, and the total supply is capped at 1 billion. So all in all, something that is probably higher risk. However, the tokenomics seem to be okay for us farmers at least, and the contracts seem to work. And when I say contracts seem to work, this is actually one way that you can check whether a farm is likely to be a hard rug or not. Essentially, you swap like a tiny bit, like one token, and swap it to like UST or something. Then you place it in the liquidity pool, and then you stake it in the farm, and then you do the reverse. So you try to unstake like one LP token, you unstake it, and then you see whether that unstakes, and then you go into pool and you remove that liquidity and see whether you get your tokens back. There's a pretty simple way to check whether the contract actually works and that you can get your money back. The other way is that once you've farmed a bit of the farm token, try selling it and see whether it can be sold. Because the other type of crypto scam or rug pull is that the token has code in it that states that it can only be sold by a certain address, and that certain address usually belongs to the developer, and that is how all the liquidity is drained from that particular token. Your money is transferred straight to whoever's wallet that is able to sell the tokens. So these are just two ways how you can try to protect yourself when aping into these kind of new projects. Of course, this is not financial advice, and this is a pretty new and pretty high risk project. However, I just thought that it would be good to cover since it seems pretty attractive in terms of risk reward, and it fulfills all of our criteria. Pretty light news day this week, apart from the fact that of course Bitcoin hit an all-time high again. I hope you found this video informative and useful, and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.